Well, hey, I got to say, this is a pretty good turnout for the blue side. Pretty happy with that, quite frankly. The blue side is obviously not the sexy side of InfoSec, right? Everyone wants to be on the red team. Everyone wants to be on that side of things. So I appreciate you all coming out here and showing up. We're not going to get started yet until they're going to try to fix this one more time. So I'm just filling time right now, folks. It feels awkward. So that's how I okay. So this talk, we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. Really, the whole idea behind this is, quite frankly, folks, we are infatuated with linker lights. You know I am. I used to actually have a switch in the place that I worked with. It had these blades. It was like 40 cords on this one switch. We used to actually go into the server room, turn off the lights, and watch this stuff. It was beautiful. So I understand the infatuation with linker lights. However, we're kind of forgetting some pretty significant things when it comes to our organization and our security posture, and that is the human side of things. Absolutely. I'm feeling time, Adrian. You just go ahead and continue. I'm just feeling time right now. So, but really, that's kind of the focus of my talk here is to talk about the people and how we can leverage them in your organization. Okay, looks like we're good there. I was going to blame it on this laptop, but I'm glad to hear that it wasn't just this time. So as you can see on the screen, no signal is not something you want. Fortunately, they did just give me this. My laptop died a couple of days ago in Austin. I got back to the office for one day, and they threw this one at me. So still figure, hey. All right. You're my hero, Adrian. All right. Okay. Well, I'll get the mouse the hell out of the way, and we can get started here, folks. Okay. So, again, this is a brand new laptop for me, so trying to figure it out. Once again, this is like twice in a row now. I've done things here in Tennessee. I spoke at BSides Chattanooga not long ago, and I did a totally new presentation that had every opportunity for things to go wrong. So here I am repeating it in Nashville, right? So anyways, we're going to talk a little bit about hacking the users and what we can do with the users, how we make it most successful. Now, everything I talk about here, you don't have to use our platform for our software, nothing like that. This isn't a vendor pitch, I promise. I love to answer questions, talk about this sort of thing. Anything you can do here, if you're doing your own awareness programs and stuff, you can leverage this sort of information on your own too. About me, a little bit about me. I'm old. I've been around in IT and security since the BBS days. Anyone else remember Wildcat BBS and right? Okay, FidoNet and right. All right, there's my people right there. The thrill of getting a courier-to-courier modem connection because the compression was off the chart. It was fantastic. We'd get sometimes, up to like 16K baud. It was wonderful. So anyways, I'm showing my age here. I worked with the Department of Defense. I was a contractor for about 10 years at the organization that does the network backbone for all of the post camps and stations across North America for the U.S. Army. I was a security manager there. It's why I look like this at 28 years old. Security's hard. But I've been around a little bit, been in the business since about the mid-1990s, seen a lot of things. What's interesting is over the years, some things don't change, all right? We've seen phishing attacks and we've seen social engineering attacks hit our people since forever ago, right? Think about the old, I love you virus, the Melissa stuff, all that stuff back then. That was stuff going on back in the 1990s, and people were falling for it. What has changed, though, is the impact this is having on organizations these days, right? It used to feel like a big deal when we got a virus on our network, but compared to what's happening these days, it was more of an inconvenience, right? You get a Zeus banking Trojan, oh boy, that sucks. Compared to today's ransomware attacks, it's nothing, right? So the issue continues, but the loss that we're experiencing has really ramped up. So this is what I've been seeing over the years. I work for a company called KnowBe4. We've got 17,000 customers across like all kinds of places, right? What's important is I hear a lot of these stories. I talk to a lot of people and hear what's going on, what happens out there, and we see a lot of the stuff that happens out in the world when it comes to phishing. That's kind of where I base some of my numbers and some of the stuff that I've learned here on. That's why it matters. Okay, so the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about current trends, real goal, politics of phishing your users, making it count, dealing with repeat offenders. Let's start with the current trends in scams, right? Oh, great. I didn't even realize that. Okay. Phishing leads to ransomware, which is kind of a big deal these days, right? This is my favorite slide that I've ever done, because it's very true, right? Before ransomware, we were just kind of cruising along, minding our own business. We knew what security was going on, right? We knew what we were doing. Ransomware hit, and it's really just flipped us on our lid. And yes, folks, those are outhouses, and that is a convertible, okay? This is what's happened to our industry. This hit and really messed us all up with the stuff that we were used to doing, all right? How bad? Some of the numbers behind it. When it comes to phishing, phishing is like the #1 attack vector that people are getting in. 91% of successful data breaches start with a spear phishing attack. CEO fraud. Anyone ever heard of that? Right? That's where someone pretends to be a leader in your organization, sends an email to somebody and says, we need you to wire money out, right? Sounds really simple. Yeah, we're talking about $9 billion in losses expected this year on something that stupid. People fall for this stuff left and right. W-2 scams, same sort of thing. Hey, I need you to send all the W-2s, all the tax forms to me. And then the bad guys get that and file all the taxes on behalf of all your employees, and the employees, when they go to file their taxes, find out it's already been done for them. Believe it or not, the bad guys always end up with a refund. It's amazing. But they've taken your money, they've run, and now these people have to deal with about 12 to 18 months of playing games with the IRS and all that stuff to get it straightened out. It's an ugly thing, and it's all happening through phishing. Now, ransomware specifically, we're expecting by the end of next year will be $11.5 billion in damages due to ransomware. This is just not stopping. It just keeps growing and growing. In 2017, it increased by 300% over 2016. We're still seeing growth like that. And it is interesting, in 2016, we saw about 153,000 cases of mobile ransomware. Now, that hasn't gone very far yet, but I expect that once they're able to get their grubby little fingers in there and actually get it to work reliably, and on those that don't have to sideload APKs and stuff, that's going to get a whole lot worse. Because I'm pretty sure if you're anything like me, this little device right here checks your work email, connects to your work, may even have a VPN connection into your office, right? These things are going to be a great target once they can get their hands on it, because we have a lot of interesting stuff on here. So these are some of the numbers that are back there. Now, when it comes to social engineering, which is really the backbone behind phishing, you know, I love this show. Anyone else here watch Mr. Robot at all? Right? I still think season 1 was the best, but, you know, okay. But I love this. I've never found it hard to hack most people. If you listen to them, watch them, their vulnerabilities are like a neon sign screwed into their heads. This is very, very true. The thing is, most of us fall for the same things, and the bad guys are getting a whole lot better about figuring out what that is. All right? Now, what we found in our platform is, it's kind of discouraging sometimes, but about 55% of the people will click on a phishing email within 60 minutes of it hitting their inbox. That means it's come in, it's hit their inbox, it's competing with all the other emails that are in their inbox, they've bothered to look at it, and they click the link. Now imagine if in your organization, you could get 55% of the people to click on important emails within the first hour that they get it, right? We'd be like 99% efficient, we could blow Amazon out of the water, Walmart would never see anything like it, okay? How does this happen? Why are they so good at getting people to click? And this is from our platform. And so, you know, what we do on our platform a lot of times is we take reported phishing emails, we defang them, and then we turn around and turn them into templates for people to use. So this is indicative of real types of emails that are out there. Well, to give you an idea of some of the stuff that we see and the click rates that we go with, they've made it so enticing for these people to do this. They make people want to click. Give you an idea here on the left-hand side. This is our Q4. Our Q1 is due out any day now. I was hoping to have it yesterday. But on the left side here, you'll see LinkedIn. 53% click rate on LinkedIn stuff. Now, what's interesting is for like Q2, Q3, it was around the 40%. And what's happened is, though, we started hitting the end of the year. So the end of the year, people start getting their Christmas bonuses. They start thinking about, hey, it's a whole new year. Let's make some changes. Maybe I'll look for that new job. Maybe I'll do something different. So what do? They start answering LinkedIn stuff. They start playing around on LinkedIn a little bit more. They start clicking these things. The attackers know this sort of stuff. People are more vulnerable for LinkedIn stuff. It's rather interesting. The free pizza one has been on here for a while. I'm actually disturbed to find out that I hear it actually dropped off of the list for this one, because I'd click on that every damn time. But it usually runs about 8 or 9%. And you're basically sending somebody an email that says, hey, this is Pizza Hut. Click here for this coupon for your pan pizza, free pan pizza. Who wouldn't click on that, right? It's a fantastic way to get people to do it. But the attackers, they leverage things in social engineering. They leverage our human emotions against us. And what's interesting, some of the most powerful human emotions we have, the things that drive us to actions, are things like outrage and anger. If you can outrage somebody or you can make them angry, they're going to want to do something with that. They build that energy. They have to find a way to put it out there, right? So you build a phishing email that's based on that sort of thing. What's really hot this time? Let's see. Oh, I don't know. Politics. That's been going on for a while right now. Regardless of what side of the fence you're on, we have a sort of controversial guy in the White House right now that people get really riled up either way about. The bad guys leverage that. And they'll put things in there that sound really outrageous. They get people riled up, and then they'll give them an action, which is to click a link, and bam, what do you know? Things happen. Another example of some pretty interesting and really common ones we see over and over again up here on the top right, have to do with delivery attempts or orders. Who here has an Amazon Prime account? Okay, most of the room? Right. I get that, like, Amazon, I don't even remember what the hell I ordered from them. Boxes show up, and I'm like, oh, it's a surprise. I ordered it 2 days ago. I don't even remember, but this stuff shows up all the time, right? If you're like me and you order that much stuff, these things are especially effective, right? You get something that says your order's been delayed. There's two ways this affects people, and it's kind of interesting how this does it on both sides, right? If you've ordered something, you want to know why the hell it was delayed. You're like, oh no, I can't live without my, whatever stupid thing it is that happens to be in the box this time, just because I could order it for $4 and get it prime shipped. You want to know why it was delayed, right? But on the flip side, if you didn't order something, that's the second class of people, you want to know why somebody's telling you that your order was delayed. It hits two different groups of people different ways and makes them want to click on it like that. That's the enticing stuff that runs behind some of these headlines that they're putting out there. Of course, there's always the messing with your money sort of thing. Everybody wants to know about that, and they worry about that when your money's getting messed with. So the bank ones are really good. All of those things kind of play there. But you can see where they're attacking the people with these things that get emotions going one way or another. And again, they're successful enough that this is kind of the current state of things, right? This is the norm in our organizations these days. Everything's on fire around us, okay? This is just our normal stance, unfortunately. But hopefully we can do some things to get out of that. Personally, I think that leveraging your users to help you with that is a good idea. Let's move on to the next one here. The real goal of security awareness training. I can't tell you how many times I see people screw this up, quite frankly. They do awareness training for checking the box. Because whatever regulation, whatever something or another says that I have to do this, right? Compliance is not security. Is that shocking to anyone in here? Okay. Just because you're compliant with NIST or you're compliant with PCI doesn't necessarily mean you're secure. Oh wow, that just ran right off the side of the screen. Huh, how about that? Okay, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I'll just spell that out to you. It's from the great orator Mike Tyson. This is an interesting thing for me because what you want to do, your goal for awareness training is really to build reflexive behaviors in your users. When they do something, you don't want them to have to stop and think about it, spend a lot of time on it. You want it to come in, you want them to do whatever action it is that you want them to do, and then move on with their day and continue doing their job. Okay, so that's really what your goal needs to be. It needs to be to get people to identify these things, have a reflexive behavior, and move on. Unfortunately, sometimes we fail at doing that. Now, when you're doing an awareness program, when you're trying to work with your people, when you want to turn them into this human firewall thing, there's a few things we need to start with. Number one, when we set our goals, we need to be honest about some things. We need to be completely honest with ourselves about the goals and what your organizational culture will tolerate. Now, I see a lot of people come in and they want to do this training, and maybe they're even gung-ho for it. They see the value in it, and they're like, okay, we're going to change all of this stuff through the user training, right? Don't do that all at once. If you try to eat the whole elephant at once, you're going to fail. And that happens too often. And I'm going to say something that may not be horribly popular, but I hope if we look in the mirror, we can understand this a little bit more. Generally speaking, us in InfoSec, because I hate the word cyber, us in InfoSec, us in IT, those sorts of folks, we're probably not the greatest with people all the time, okay? We have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to that, right? We're in this place, we're in this spot because we're good with computers that do what we tell them to do, or if we screw up, they don't do it, but at least that's our fault. Humans are a whole different ballgame for a lot of us, right? So this is tricky for some people. So when you set your goals, though, you got to be honest with yourself about some things. When you set your goals, we need to get away from setting qualitative goals and move to quantitative. And what that means is instead of saying, we're going to make this better, and that's our goal, we need to start putting some numbers behind it. We need to start measuring it. And we need to start doing this because we need to start doing a better job speaking with our leadership, too. So when we go into our leadership, we're talking in the numbers and the ROI sort of thing that they sort of like to hear, right? So when you set your goals, set some goals, sit down, take a little bit of time. I think on the next slide I'll talk about the magic wand experiment, but put some numbers behind it. For example, I want to reduce malware-related tickets by 25% in 60 days. You may pluck that number right out of the air or wherever you're going to pluck it out of, but that number is something that you put on the board. And you may not meet it the first time if you're not used to doing this, and that's okay, but at least you have a goal to go for. You either exceed it, you don't exceed it, whatever. And then you can adjust fire a little bit there. But start building quantitative sorts of goals. The organizational culture part is going to play a very important role when it comes down to training your users. If you're in an organization that has recently been breached, or you're in an organization that, let's say, a competitor has recently been breached badly, you're probably going to be able to make more sweeping, large changes than in an organization that isn't really convinced that it's a problem yet. You need to look at that and you need to think about that. How far can I go? How far can I push this? How big of a change can I make right now? And it takes a little bit of thinking to do that, but we need to be more aware of that. I see people not think about that sort of stuff when they come in. Just in general with security programs, that's important, all right? I've been guilty of it before. Come into a place and you're like, oh my God, this place is terrible. You know, this place is bad. I need to fix everything. I need to do it now. If you're not in a position that that's going to be supported by leadership because they don't see the value in it, you're going to fail at it. So, now the magic wand experiment. I like this because I'm a Harry Potter geek. I'm a nerd, I admit it. Just because it says magic wand. But the idea is if you could wave a magic wand in your organization and change 3 behaviors at once, immediately, what would they be? Now, don't expect that you are going to change those behaviors immediately, but at least that helps sort out the stuff. And typically speaking, what we see in this is it's usually something around getting users to quit doing stupid things and better password hygiene, because we're still fighting that battle from 20 years ago still, right? We still can't get passwords right. And then usually it'll be something a little bit more related to their organization, right? Cover sheet for the TPS report. I don't know, something like that, right? We got to work something else in there. But generally speaking, you can pick 3 things like that. And then what you want to do is you want to focus on those 3 things because you've already identified that those are the most important for you. Don't try to fix everything because you will fail. So just spend a little bit of time on that. We recommend you take anywhere from 6, 12, 18 months maybe on some of the big stuff if it really is that important to your organization to fix it. It doesn't always have to take that long, and then what you do is occasionally you revisit this and you go, you know what, this has reached an acceptable level because I have quantifiable goals that I have met, and now I can move on to something else. And then you go into maintenance mode with those things. So, magic wand thought experiment. Think about that in your organization. What would you change if you could change today? Use that as your goals. Now the next one, dealing with the politics of phishing your users. Right. That's always a challenge. What's important about this is messaging right from the beginning. a lot of organizations, when you start talking about phishing your users, along with an awareness program, which I think is very, very important, there's that, oh, you're going to try to make me look bad feeling. And that's not the goal of it. Let me tell you something. When you put together these programs, I'll talk a little bit about how these play together a little bit better in a few minutes here, but when you put these things together, the idea behind the phishing emails is to give them a chance to practice what you taught them in training. Okay? You go into training, you learn something, and it's great, okay? Who's going to remember what was in these slides a year from now? Nobody. I'm probably not going to remember what was in these slides a year from now. Nobody's going to remember that, right? Especially if all I do is show these to you. But if I were to sit down and have you practice these things, it'll stick in your head. And this is what happens with the users. This is one of the big ideas behind doing the phishing along with the training. Okay? The other thing it does, it gives them a healthy sense of paranoia. They get an email that comes in, and how many times have you guys had somebody do something stupid, and you go to them and you're like, what happened? And they go, well, it felt a little weird, but I clicked on it anyways. Right? That's the point where you have to show restraint, not throttle them. But far too often that happens. They get that kind of, I call it the spidey sense, the little tingle in the back of their neck that something was wrong with this, but they didn't really have another action to do, and so they went ahead and clicked it. Well, now what you're doing is you're making them a little bit paranoid because they know that you're sending them these simulated phishing attacks, and they go, I wonder if this is one of the ones from the IT department. I better report it, instead of clicking on the link. Okay? It gives them an out. It's a little psychology thing, but happens very, very well and very easily. The next thing is, and this kind of goes along with the top one, don't focus on the negatives. So when you do your messaging, what you're saying is, we have a threat here. There's a significant issue. We're seeing all these things getting breached, a lot of them through email. We're going to tackle this through the users. This is what we're doing. We're training you guys to do a better job. And then you don't focus on the negatives. As tempting as it is to put up the wall of shame, so that Bob from accounting, that son of a bitch is on there again, okay? Far too often we want to do that because, man, it would feel good to shame Bob. We don't shame the users. Focus on the positives. So what that means is when your folks are doing a good job, say thanks. Say good job. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll gamify stuff like this. So you'll say the department with the lowest click rate for the quarter gets a pizza party. You know, if your budget doesn't allow for a couple of pizzas to try to get people on board with this, you've got some other issues. But I mean, even if it's trophies, even if it's a kudos to everybody, whatever works in your organization's culture, give them a kudos. Make them feel good about what it is they're doing. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah. No, I like throwing them out of windows. If you got repeat offenders, no, we'll talk about that a little bit. You know, the short and sweet is you do it privately. You don't let them get away with it because this is a threat in your organization. So you can't just let it go. But remember, when you're starting your messaging is always, we're dealing with the problem. We're doing this not to shame people, but because there's a legitimate threat. These phishing things, if people are not paying attention and they're not taking the effort to try to spot these things and they're just like, screw it, I'm not going to do it, it really ends up being no different than people who are downloading pornography or third-party apps and stuff in your organization that are doing risky behaviors of other types, and it needs to be treated the same way. And you typically wouldn't shame Bob in accounting for his pornography habit, right? So you want to kind of treat it the same way. Again, gamify. Make it a challenge. Make it fun. People do get nervous when you put this stuff out there because they're afraid, oh, I'm going to fail, and then they're going to make me look bad, and it's going to reflect on my, permanent record, and, all that. Gamify it. Make it a challenge. Have a little bit of fun with it. It's important that you collect stats, and I'll talk about that as part of the 4 steps here. But when you collect these stats, do something good with it. Let people know you're doing a good job. Top-level buy-in as soon as possible. Before you start a program like this, make sure, again, through that messaging, that your leadership at the top understands the threat. And that may take subscribing them to Forbes and Money Magazine and a couple other ones right now, which is fantastic because all the time now they're reading about these threats and these breaches and all of these things that are happening in those magazines. So it's landing square in their corners right now, which has really helped us as a security community to be able to get that message across. It's not just us running around saying the world's on fire, because honestly, we've been doing that for 20 years, maybe longer. This time we actually have a lot of backup on that. We're seeing executives losing their jobs. We're seeing organizations really being hit by this. So we can get the top level buy-in. But where this helps you is when you do have those people that push back on you, and the executives have your back, and they're going, no, wait a minute. This is significant. I've got his back. That's a world of a difference in your organization. Metrics and well-defined goals. Again, you got to measure these things. This is why I'm really stressing having quantifiable goals. Because when you're dealing with metrics and goals and numbers, you're no longer dealing with Bob is a jerk, I don't like him, and that's why we're going to hang him. Okay? When you can come in and say Bob is clicking on 42% of the things that come in his email just like everyone else, then everyone else is only doing it 10% or 2% or whatever. It's now not you picking on Bob. It's Bob messing up. So it's important to have those numbers and those metrics and goals behind that. It really helps us paint this picture. So moving on here, making it count. So I like to think about it this way. We really are arming our employees for battle. Every single day, they're getting hammered with these emails. The emails are coming through, and spam filters, that's for spam. Even the good email gateways, they'll do a decent job on some of this stuff, but even the best of breed is still letting 10, 15% of the phishing or spear phishing emails right through. It's incredibly hard to stop a spear phishing email from hitting a person. If any of you guys red team here, when you attack people, when you attack organizations, attacking the perimeter is great. You can spend all day, all week, all month doing it, and sometimes you can't get anywhere. But you target those people, and you're in like nothing. It happens, right? The filters, all the technology in the world these days is not stopping these attacks from getting through. Now, endpoint protection is an awesome thing. You need it. Don't rely on it. If you're running stuff that's just strictly signature-based, I feel for you. Go change that right now. Because signature-based stuff is not working at all. Behavioral analytics, all these cool little buzzwords we're flying around on here on endpoint protection, that's great because you're going to need that if and when it does get through. All of these different layers slow it down, reduce the number of attacks that the people are seeing. But ultimately, all things said and done, they're going to get through to the users. Eventually, somebody's going to click on something. You better have good endpoint protection. You better have good backups. In the case of like a ransomware attack. When it comes to fraud, you're kind of screwed, quite frankly. If your people don't get it, if your executives, if your leadership, if your people in HR or finance or any of those sorts of groups that are handling money, that are handling information, if they get phished and they send the information out, you better hope your DLP catches it. But very often, right out. How many people here are running a real DLP sort of thing at your gateways? Okay, I got like 1.5 hands. Okay, 2.5 hands. Okay, that's pretty typical. We're not dissecting email. We're not dissecting that sort of stuff and pulling it apart and looking for those things very often. So when it comes to scams, when it comes to that, socials are easy to spot, credit card numbers. But what about a wire transfer request? In the middle of all these other requests, how do you pick that one wire transfer request that was garbage out of those things, right? You get an email from your CEO. It says, hey, I'm in negotiations right now. I got a deal on something, talking to one of my buddies. We're going to buy this company. We're acquiring this company right now. I need you to send $25,000 to this account right now. I'm in the boardroom meeting with these folks right now. We're going to take over this company. Just get it done. That's a pretty good attack on people. And in a lot of cases, 25 grand out the door, just like that. What's bad about that is then they'll pick up the phone and say, okay, boss, I did what you said. And that's usually followed by, what are you talking about? All right, and that's where bad things happen, right? That's a whole nother talk. I do a whole nother talk on that sort of stuff. But when we're doing these, we need to think about a few things. I love this because it's so blatantly honest. 3 truths about human nature. We're lazy, social, and creatures of habit. Design products for this reality. Design your awareness program. Design your security program around these as well. Because if we try to fight against it, we're going to fail. So we have to understand that. We have to ease them into things. When we're asking somebody to change their habits and what they do and what they're comfortable in doing and pull them out of that comfort zone, we're asking them to do a lot. We have to understand that when it comes to working with people. Again, we're not always that great with people. Why not leverage in and pull in maybe your marketing department or your PR group or something like that? Get them to give you tips and tricks. You don't have to do this alone. Okay? So think about that. It's kind of an eye-opening thing if you really consider. If you try to work against that human nature, we're going to fail. You're destined to fail. Another one. Something that a lot of people don't think about. Your awareness program and the content in it are the visible face of your department to the rest of your company. This is especially true in larger organizations where you as the security folks or IT folks don't interact with a lot of the people that are in your organization ever throughout the year. They just do their thing, you do your thing, you haven't met them, they haven't met you, everything's fine. Where are your actual touch points with these people? Usually it's through your awareness program. Usually it's through the training that you give them every year. And if it doesn't look like you put any effort into it, why are they going to put any effort into it? Why are they going to care? So imagine this. You're building your face to them. All right? So let's say you're somewhere where you just kind of throw stuff up. You bring them in every year. You throw them in a room and toss up a bunch of PowerPoints, bore them to death, maybe after lunch like you guys. You're awake, right? Okay. Imagine you do that to these folks, and then you kind of just move on. All right? Now, Bob in accounting, he does his thing. He clicks on the link, and all of a sudden, well, maybe not all of a sudden, maybe 10 minutes later, his computer runs really slow. And the fans are all running like crazy, right? Because he's clicked on that link 4 or 5 times because he didn't do anything the first time. What the hell's wrong with this stupid thing? I'm going to delete it, right? So now Bob knows something's a little weird because he can't do anything, and his fans are running 100 miles an hour, and weird stuff's happening. It's Friday afternoon. He's going to go, you know what? Lock the computer. Screw it. I'm going home, right? As opposed to having a Bob that will call you up and go, I did something stupid, guys, and I know I did something stupid. Please help me, right? Would you rather have Bob going home on Friday while your network burns? Or would you rather have him willing to call you and say, I did something stupid. We need to get ahead of this, right? That's the things that when you're getting out there in front of your people and you're sending that message, that's going to be the feeling that you're trying to get through about your security department and your IT department. Are you, I'm not going to say like warm and fuzzy. We're never going to be people they want to come up and give a hug to, right? That's just not us. But are we scary to them? We shouldn't be. We can't be. If you really want them to help you out, we can't be scary. When they call you, you can't be like, what'd you do this time, you idiot? Right? We want to say it, but we got to understand that most of the time your employees are educated in domains that you aren't. Okay? If you want a reality check, go to your accounting team and try to do something in one of their spreadsheets. Okay? They got some amazing crap going on. We can't treat them like idiots because they're not idiots. They're just educated in places we aren't, and we are in places they aren't. So things that are trivial to us are not trivial to them, and vice versa. We have to remember that. We're dealing with humans here. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a background where they're at. So when we're talking to them, we need to take a little better approach at that. Who remembers the Saturday Night Live skits where the guy's like, move, just kind of coming in, shoving people to the side, right? That can't be us. But we have a reputation for that. Because, again, we aren't always people persons. That's okay. We need to be aware of it. We need to try to soften that a little bit. So there's 4 steps that we found that work really, really well when it comes to awareness training. And you can do this, again, with or without our platform. We make it a little easier, but other than that, this is 4 steps that we found work incredibly well. First, get a baseline. Understand how prone your people are to being phished. okay? This comes in importance here as we move down a little bit. But make sure you understand just how prone they are to phishing. The second step is you train them. Now, there's some programs out there that what they try to do is they just start doing the phishing piece, and when people screw up, then they try to train them when they screwed up, right? That's really not the best time to give people the initial training. How many people here have kids? Okay, a few more hands here. I have 3 of them. They're all teenagers. God bless me. But I can't tell you how many times at least one of them has come home at least once. Every one of them has come home at least once and said, man, I had a test this week and the teacher never even taught me what to look for or what to, the material, right? We've all heard that from our kids if we have kids. You don't want your users feeling that way, so don't phish them if you haven't taught them how to prepare themselves for it, okay? If you haven't taught them and you do hit them with something, you try to give them point of failure training right then and there, they're probably pretty upset already. They're not going to pay a whole lot of attention to it, right? That's part of the difference right there. So you train them. Teach them what to look for. We focus on like 22 red flags in email. It's actually not that complicated. You're not trying to teach these people to be technical people because, again, that's not their domain. But you can teach them to look at things and go, this is weird. Did I get an email from HR at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, and is that unusual? That's a pretty big red flag right there, right? Maybe I shouldn't click on this thing and put in my social security number. Odd things like that. Is there a sense of urgency in the email? That's never an immediate discounter, but if you start combining that with a couple of other things, all of a sudden that little spidey sense again is kind of going, something's a little off on this, and they can react to it. So we teach people to look for 22 red flags for that. If you hover the link, does it go where it says? That's a pretty big red flag, okay? The other thing, take this time, teach them about that password hygiene piece. Teach them about passphrases as opposed to passwords that is password 1234, and then next month it's 1235, and then, you know what I mean? We all have users that have this kind of rotation. Don't use the same thing on everywhere. That way when Yahoo gets breached, not everything else you own gets breached. I mean, we should be learning these things, but this is where you're going to teach them all of those kind of steps, right? And then you do the phishing. And quite frankly, the phishing can get to be a lot of fun. In the beginning, though, you may want to take it easy. And that's where this baseline test comes in. And frankly, we can do it for you. You don't have to be a customer or anything. We can set you up with the tool to phish your people and get you a baseline. There's no charge, no nothing, whatever. We can get you a baseline. But what happens is when you go to phish your users, if you're in an organization that's already pretty decent at spotting things, say you're down in the 10, 15% phish-prone percentages, you don't want to send them the stuff with all the horrible misspellings and all of that terrible grammar stuff, right? Don't send them the Nigerian prince scam template if they're already doing that. Because A, you're wasting their time. B, they feel like you're wasting their time. And they're going to feel like this whole thing is just stupid. But on the flip side, if your people have a 30 or 40% click rate, which is not unusual, quite frankly, you don't want to send them the tough stuff where they're like, crap, I'll never get this. This is impossible for me to spot, right? You want to build their confidence a little bit. So send them the Nigerian prince scam. Send them the things that have those really blatant tells in them so they get a little bit more confident. And then you continue to phish them, you see the results. And those numbers are going to come down. And as they come down, make it a little tougher. But don't be afraid to tell them, too. And you do it in such a way that you're like, you know what, you guys are doing such an awesome job here. You have improved so much. You've dropped your click rate down to like 10, 15%. We're going to make it a little bit trickier now. Let's see who can hang on to here. Let's see who gets the pizza party next month. Let's see who gets their name on the wall. Let's see whatever it is you're doing to gamify it. Have a little fun. Make it a little bit tougher. But tell them, we're going to up the ante here. You guys have made us in IT work harder. Who doesn't love hearing that, right? What user doesn't love hearing that? So you up the game on them, and you just continue to roll that through. Every once in a while, you may want to throw a little bit of training at them throughout the year that's specific to what's going on. First quarter, things that are related to tax scams. Everybody needs to be knowing about that, right? So you kind of pick a few things as you go along. But really, if you keep doing that, what happens is they get better at spotting them. They get more confident about taking the actions when they spot them. They're more comfortable with it. How many of us have employees that are like terrified of their computers? Right? I worked in a machine shop area. 130,000 square foot machine shop full of guys that had been doing machine work since 1954, okay? These guys are used to large mills and turning buttons, and we deployed an entire system with this. It was an ERP system, and basically they're having to go to computers and log in how many pieces made it through the milling process, how many failed, where we are here, is it going to make the order? They're having to put this stuff in there. They were terrified of computers. You have to build their confidence with that. Make them feel good about what they're doing, and then you make it a little bit tougher. So those 4 steps will make a huge difference. 5 points to consider when you're doing this. I'm going to pop through this build here. You can't do it alone. Get your top-level organizational buy-in, and get your marketing department involved. Have them help you with some of these things, right? Don't train on everything, because you're just going to overwhelm them with stuff. Pick those things that are important. Hit them with those. People only care about things that are relevant to them, right? How many times have you heard people talk about, probably not to your face, but hey, if they didn't want me to go to that website, they would block it, right? We can't block everything out there, folks. We know that, right? They need to understand that they have some responsibility in it too, and it needs to be relevant to them as well, right? When you're talking about relevancy too, think about this. How many here think that ransomware only hits people in organizations? Right? No. Oh no. It hits you at home too. People have lost pictures of their kids from infants, first birthdays, everything else, right? They've lost all of this stuff to ransomware. So what about when you're talking to them about this training that you're about to give them or what you're about to do to them? What if you tell them that, hey, this is going to keep you safe at home? Have you ever thought about all the stuff that's important to you at home, all of your taxes, all of your cat pictures, whatever the hell it is they care about, right? Make it relevant to them. Make it matter. How many here have ever had a cousin, uncle, mother-in-law call you and say something along the lines of, Microsoft called me and said my computer has a virus, and they're willing to just log in and fix it for me? And, right, we've all heard this. And most of your users have somebody that's heard something like that. It resonates with them. They think about it. It becomes relevant to them because you're teaching them how to be safe against these things. They can teach their family too. So make it matter to them. Your mission is to come alongside the employees and help them make wise security choices. It's not to shove them down a path or anything. You're supposed to be there supporting them and helping them make those choices. They will learn to make those choices on their own moving forward, but you need to come in maybe and help some of those folks along. And this is a way to manage an ongoing problem. This is not a solution. Never treat awareness programs, never treat your spam filter, never treat your endpoint protection, never treat your backups as a solution. I hate that word. There is no solution to this stuff. It's reducing risk at different layers. Okay? So there is no magic bullet for this stuff. It's got to be kind of a comprehensive thing, putting it together. Oh. The 5 best practices to embrace, again, explicit goals. Decide what behaviors. Treat it like a marketing campaign. Phish them frequently, at least once a month. We found that if you do the phishing exercises less than once a month, the return drops off significantly. If you can do it every 2 weeks and just keep a running random one going, that's much more powerful. And then the last one, again, I can't reiterate this enough. Don't be a jerk. We've got to quit alienating the people. Make them feel comfortable coming to you when there's a problem. Now, there's 4 stages of competence, and I'm just going to build this out. This isn't even my slide, but I do love it. Okay? But basically, we start off with, I don't know that I don't know something. We move into, I know that I don't know something, and that's actually a good thing, where people are cautious. They're like, ooh, you know what? I don't know everything about this. Instead of being completely oblivious, like all of my teenagers are. They're all still way the hell over here. But then they'll move about, I know something, but I have to think about how to do it. I have to spend some time, okay? In the military, in the DOD, it's like where you have to read the manual on what the next step is. You got to pull out the TTP to figure out what to do next, right? The last one is, I know something so well I don't have to think about it. So using my DOD experience, one of the things they teach you in the DOD and the Army especially is how to break down a rifle. And they teach it to you about 242 times more often than you really need to know, just to be able to tear the thing down and put it back together. And the reason they do this is, when all hell's breaking loose around you, you can do it without thinking about it. It's just something that your hands do. It's a reflexive behavior. Remember, that's the goal of what we're doing here, is a reflexive behavior. These people As you get them up in these stages, and you will build these stages over time, eventually they get to that point, that email comes in, they look at it, they go, okay, something's weird, bam, I'm reporting it, I'm moving on, and I'm doing my thing. It doesn't take time out of their business. Now, when it comes to getting them to do the right thing, I love the nudge theory thing, and I love this example of it. So the nudge theory is really something that, again, I recommend you get people like your marketing teams and some of those folks involved when you're looking at stuff like this, right? The nudge theory comes into play, and this is a great example. You're standing there, imagine you're standing there with the soda bottle that you just finished here, right? Or that can of Rockstar, which I'm eyeing because I love Rockstar, and I just had one, and you can't tell right before I did this. But on the left, you have a choice. You're going to put it in one of these two spots. On the left, you have the landfill. It's kind of hard to see here. It's a little blurry. But that's dirty, trashy, garbage, strewn everywhere, unorganized, right? That's a nasty place to be. On the right-hand side is the recycle. And you almost expect as you put the bottle in there to have that like choir of angels singing, oh, you know, it's just so pretty. We all know that this is what recycling looks like, folks. It's very pretty like that, right? But as you're standing there with that can and you're reaching out, which direction are you going to go? You're probably going to go to the recycle one if you have the choice, right? It's like in your company break room, putting healthy foods at eye level and putting the garbage down the bottom, right? That's nudging them towards making a better choice without telling them they have to, okay? There's nothing here that's going to keep you from throwing that can on the landfill side, but it's going to make you want to go that direction. We see that a lot in things like your password portals, okay? Nobody wants to have the red password, and I love this, not great, okay? I don't know that I've actually seen one that says not great, but you see the colors, and you know the difference between red, yellow, and green, right? And you naturally want to go up the scale towards green. Even if it ends up you being angry because you find out that your portal doesn't support special characters and it grades that completely on the length of your password, which is just stupid, but no, that didn't happen to me recently, okay? And I'm not still upset about it. But you get the idea. It's nudging you to do the right thing without blatantly just throwing it in your face, okay? The gamification, right? Playing the games, the metrics. Everything you do reinforces your point and purpose in this. That's the other piece to it. And we've talked a bit about this one already. So, and I'll show you this graph, which is kind of eye-opening here in a minute. Now, what do you do once you've taught them how to identify these things? You give them a way to report it. If you're in an organization, you have a phishing email, right? And it's phish emails at whatever your organization is. And you have people who just want to forward that to that. That's great. Make sure they remember who to report it to when they get these sorts of things. That's one of the tricks to making it reflexive. We have a button. Again, you don't have to be a customer. I'm not selling you anything, folks, I promise. This is an awesome tool. I just love this tool. It goes in Office 365, Outlook, and Gmail. If they get something that they think is a phishing email, they click the button, it wraps it up with the headers and all, and sends it to someone in your organization for them to do. Now this is where the sensor part comes into play. If you get people that start reporting emails, let's say you get 3 or 4 or 5 of these things roll into your reporting inbox, or however you want to do it. You can even set up a SIM to do something like this, where if you get enough of these things in a short amount of time, it triggers an alert. If you get something like that, you can pretty confidently say we're being hit with a phishing attack. We're part of a campaign. They're targeting us. We actually get this all the time because of who we are. Who doesn't want to own the people that talk about phishing through phishing, right? Okay, I'll give them credit. They want to try. But we get this stuff and they'll go, hey, you know what? This email's coming in. If you see this this subject line, delete it. So send it out to all the users. You can even go into the email servers and just start wiping them out. In the larger organizations, this is great because now maybe 10 or 20 of your people have gotten it, reported it, but 2,000 of them never got it. 2,000 of them never saw it. They were never tempted by it, right? So you can leverage people as a sensor through stuff like this. The other thing is, if you're going to use a tool like this, and there's several of them out there, and there's several of them that are free, make sure it's wrapping it up with those headers. So you don't have to go back to the user. How many here have done the dance with the user where you're like, no, forward doesn't work. No, you got to drag and drop, right? It's a pain in the ass. Get something that's going to send you all the information you really need to spot these sorts of things, okay? Last year's DBIR, I was so happy because I've been talking about this for a while now. Train your employees with regard to phishing and provide them a quick and easy way to report suspicious emails. I'm like, yes! I'm vindicated. I've been talking about this. Someone else believes it too. Remember to leverage your people to also warn you when stuff is going on. So back to the agenda here. Gosh, I'm really going to take these builds out before I do this again. Dealing with repeat offenders. I believe we had that question a little while ago. How do you do that? Well, don't publicly shame the users. Again, it's so tempting sometimes. Assign remedial training. Now, I love this in our platform. If they screw up and click a link, you can actually automatically assign them remedial training. Nobody likes remedial training, okay? But give them some remedial training. It's got to kind of hurt a little bit. It's got to be less than fun when they do screw up. I mean, let's be honest about it. It may also teach them what it is that they did wrong. If you can assign them remedial training that's related to what they just did, that's even better. Focus on the positives. Hey, you know what? You screwed up. That's okay. That's all right. We know it. Learn from your mistake. Take it seriously, though. Don't let it go on. Now, if somebody clicks on these things, you can usually tell the difference between somebody who just doesn't care and somebody who's not getting it. And there's another part of this too, if you want to wait for the whole build to go out. Not trying to call you out or anything, but just trying to help you out here. It's what's that? It's yeah. Well, see. Tell me how that makes you feel. Okay, but when something like this happens, you may need to involve HR. So the first time, you know what, it may be like, okay. But you can usually tell the difference between someone who just doesn't care and someone who's not getting it. If they're not getting it, you may need to come up alongside them again and guide them a little bit. Help them understand. If they just don't care and they're like, ah, screw this, I don't care. Then you start, the first time is a gimme. Maybe even the second time. But the third time, you bring the manager in. And you go, hey, come on, Bob, we need to talk about this. Because remember, this is putting your company at risk. We need to take it seriously. So you step aside with their manager and you say, you know what, Bob, your activities here are going to cause a problem. And if we get breached because you clicked on that, how do you think that's going to look on your permanent record, right? As you're carrying the box out the door because you're not trying. If that doesn't work, bring in HR. Bring in HR and their manager and go. But you focus on the fact that this is causing us issues because this is putting us as an organization at risk. Don't focus on the fact that it's Bob and you don't like the fact that he wears that stupid tie every Thursday. Okay? Focus on the fact that 91% of successful data breaches start with what you're doing, pal. We see this stuff happening in the news all the time. This is because of people doing actions that you're doing, Bob. We need to fix that. And if you've gotten them involved from the beginning, HR should have no problem putting them on a PIP because your messaging has always been about the numbers behind it. It's always been about the risk that's going on. It's not about Bob pisses me off when I look at him. So HR, we've seen many companies put people right on a PIP because it is serious enough that it could tank your company, right? Any other activity that they're doing that's stupid like that, they're going to get in trouble for. Don't let them slide on this. If it's significant, though, make sure you're involving their manager and HR. Don't do this alone. Don't you come up to Bob and go, Bob, I'm going to get you fired if you keep screwing up and you don't take this seriously. You have to involve those other people. If you're in an organization that's big enough, when you're setting this stuff up, get legal involved too. Make sure they're in line with what you're doing and why you're doing it, because they'll have your back as well. But take it seriously. So, does it work? This is something that blows people's minds. I mean it. And I'm not doing this to try to sell you. I'm telling you because a lot of us have probably murmured the phrase at some point in our careers, especially as older folks, that you can't train users, or you can't fix users, you can't patch users, can't fix stupid. That's not true. And I'll tell you, I think the problem has been historically with us, we don't do a good job training the users. And I don't mean to make that sound bad, but again, that's not why we were typically hired. We were not hired to be people. We're hired to deal with technology. Okay, so it's not necessarily one of our core competencies. So when we don't do it well, we put it back on the users, and we got to stop doing that. This is 6 million users in 11,000 organizations. This is not a small sample size, folks. This is not, oh, this doesn't apply to my company. This is everything, all right? This was not cherry-picked. This was like all of the users we had at the time that had been there for a year. 27% initial click rate was the overall average. And we have some breakdowns of this by industry and stuff like that, which is sometimes pretty shocking. But overall, this 6 million people were clicking on things 27% of the time. So that's like 1 in 4 of the phishing emails that lands in someone's inbox, they're clicking on it. That's a problem. That's a big problem. When I talk to people in the field, I talk to people that have much higher percentages in this starting out too. So this isn't fluff. 3 months later, by training them how to spot these things, and within 90 days or so, you probably started one of your phishing campaigns, something along those lines. By that time, it's reduced it down to 13%. These are all the same people, down to 13% click rate. That's like half of the initial risk, okay? If you stop at that point, it's going to edge back up. You probably never hit the 27% again. But what happens is it's going to edge back up as people aren't thinking about it. Life takes over. You know, they're no longer paranoid about it. You'll train them again next year, right? By continuing that phishing exercise, this same 6 million people was down to 2%, 2.17% at the end of a year. That is a huge reduction in risk with what's going on. So, don't convince yourself that you can't do this with your people, because you can. We see it all the time. It may not be comfortable for us to initially do, but that's why you don't have to do it alone. You get other people involved with it. But I'm here to tell you, you can train people to be able to spot these things and to be able to be actually a very important part of your entire security program. No longer are the users a problem. These users can now be part of the solution. You get that reporting stuff going on. You get that sort of stuff going on in your organization. People feel confident about what they're doing. They're picking up the phone to you and they're going, hey, you know what? Something is wrong with this. You're down on the tail end of this thing. And it's a good feeling. I worked at a place, had about 250 users. About 200 something of them were developers. God help me again. Okay? Production is there to make those quick patches, those sorts of folks, right? What happens, though, is a lot of times our people that are like developers and technical people, we actually really suck at this sometimes because we're too confident. We think we know everything. Not to pick on any developers. Do we have any developers in the room? I need to see if you're bigger than me. Okay. I think I can take y'all. But a lot of times the developers are like, I know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know. And they're real comfortable with stuff and they click things and things go horribly wrong, right? But I was in this organization, had a lot of developers. I was kind of rolling out this sort of stuff. And I've always, at least later in my career, I've realized the power of being friendly to people when it comes to stuff like this. But we were kind of a small shop, 250 users, kind of under the radar, although we dealt with some pretty big things. As a matter of fact, we were a SaaS shop. We did unemployment sort of stuff. I think we did actually the payouts for all of the state of Tennessee, okay, for unemployment. So if you're unemployed and you're collecting that check, that was us, yay. But we weren't really well known. We had somebody send in a W-2 fraud email. Came in from the president of the company, looked just like his stuff, went to the HR director, said, I need you to send me all the tax stuff. I'm about to get on a plane, I'm traveling, I'm going to look at it, and then I'm going to send it off to the tax guy when we land. Okay, fantastic, wonderful. She hit me up and said, something just doesn't feel right about this. And the boss was one that would be involved in these sorts of things. He was a very in-the-weeds sort of person. And sure enough, his email looked good, but the reply-to address was something completely different. And we found out that they actually got his email signature and the information that he was traveling out of his out-of-office reply. Okay? They had all that stuff. It looked beautiful. But the lady that got it said something feels weird, and she felt comfortable enough to come to me as the security guy and go, something's weird about this. Can you take a look at this for me? And that made the difference between us being in the paper and not. It happens in the real world. I've seen it. I've felt it. As far as resources, I've talked about a few. We got a ton of free crap over here. knowbefore.com/resources. Also, Security Awareness Company is out here. If you guys saw any of them as a vendor, great group of people. They have a lot of cool resources for you too if you want to help build out your awareness program and things like that. And finally, last but not least, something I didn't mention in the beginning. How many here have heard of a guy named Kevin Mitnick? Okay. He's one of the partners in our organization. So he helped build out a lot of our training and stuff based on his social engineering skills. I have a couple of these Kevin Mitnick stainless steel lockpick business cards that I'll trade what I have here for one of your cards if you want or whatever. Also, the Lockpick Village folks back there have one of these too that's really kind of cool. So check them out if you don't get a chance to. But this is my contact info. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always here to talk about this stuff. I love to talk about this stuff. So feel free. Thank you very much. I'm open for any questions and stuff that you have too. How are we doing on time? 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes for questions. Anyone got questions? Questions? We got one over there.
If you establish like an effective baseline for phishing, when like your legal department prevents you from using like UPS's logo or LinkedIn's logo?
Well, first of all, you need to let your legal department know that that's wrong. I mean, fact is the bad guys are going to use it, right? So do you want to set up a program where, first of all, there's some legal things about that it's not illegal to use those. There's some misnomers. There's been actually some campaigns spread to say that you can't do that. However, like in our case, we use real logos. We use the logos that they keep posted on their site. We're not trying to make any money off of using their logo necessarily. We're training the people, right? So you may want to have that discussion with them, all right? But the fact is, if you're sending emails to these folks, especially if you're trying to get them up on the lower click rates where it's tough to spot them, if every logo you have is like a pizza smut, okay, they're going to spot that in a second. They're going to know exactly what to look for. So that's not going to work in the long run. But you can reach out to me if you need to. I can get you a hold of some folks that can talk about that. But there was a lot of back and forth about whether or not that was okay to do, and it is. It's just fine. So in the back there, the developer.
I'm proud of her. My wife is a mental health counselor, and they do phishing tests all the time. And she's always telling me, I wanted to fish again. And I reported out, like, you're an A-plus employee, sweetheart. And she's so proud of it. But apparently that's not normal in her organization. A lot of people quit to fish. So I mean, it's not like my wife, other than being married to a brilliant computer security person,
And he's humble, folks.
Yeah, I'm but it's like, how do we do that education? What is it that she's seeing? Given, she hasn't studied security.
Right.
That other people are just like click, click, click. Like, what is it about awareness?
A lot of it is the confidence that she has. She feels good about doing it. She's got some positive reinforcement somewhere in there. Somebody said good job to her probably, or she says that to herself. We need to make sure the positive reinforcement happens. One of the things of that Phish Alert button, if you do use our platform, when we send you the phishing emails, the simulated ones, if they click on it and they report it, it pops up and it says, congratulations, good job. You've done a good thing here, folks. That positive reinforcement is good. Likewise, if they're sending you this stuff in, if you reply to them and go, hey, thanks a lot for sending this to me, that's going to give them that better feel. And when they do spot the phishing, the real ones, make them feel good about it. Build that confidence. Yeah, that's usually what it is whether or not they've felt confident or somebody said good job to them. It doesn't take a whole lot. So, please. Okay, time.